40 years ago, the man I loved disappeared the night he was supposed to marry me. Everyone said he ran away, until a stranger arrived with a diary that revealed the truth. A threat, a lie, and a child raised on someone else's mistake. And tonight, the last confession finally walked through my door. My name is Eleanor Reeves, though the world simply calls me Grandma Ellie. At 79, I've learned something people don't like to admit: silence has a weight, and it grows heavier with age. Secrets, too. They don't stay buried, they ferment. They bruise you on the inside where no one can see. And the heaviest secret I ever carried was the name of the man I loved but could never claim. Not because he was forbidden. Not because he was dangerous. But because loving him demanded a kind of courage I didn't yet possess. It began long before my hair turned silver and my bones began to argue with the cold. It began in the summer of 1968, when I was a girl made of trembling hopes and foolish bravery. His name was Samuel Carter. He was the only boy who ever looked at me as if he could see straight through the layers I hid from everyone else. When he smiled, time didn't just stop, it held its breath. But I didn't marry him. People assume I married my late husband, Thomas, for love. And in a gentle, slow-blooming way, I did. But the heart has different chambers for different kinds of love. Thomas was comfort, kindness, the warm quilt you wrap yourself in on a cold night. Samuel was fire, beautiful, unpredictable, the kind of love that leaves ash or forever marks wherever it touches. Why did I choose safety over the blaze? For years I told myself life got complicated. But the truth is far darker, twisted into this family's history more deeply than anyone realizes. All these years later, I sit in my quiet living room, sunlight fading on old photographs, the house humming with the loneliness of age, when the mail slot clicks. I shuffle toward it, expecting bills, maybe a postcard. Instead, I freeze. There it is. A letter. In handwriting I haven't seen in 52 years. Samuel's handwriting. My heart lurched. My hands trembled so badly the envelope nearly slipped through my fingers. The paper felt warm, alive, as if it carried the heartbeat of a past I'd spent a lifetime hiding. Inside, only one sentence. I'm sorry for everything, Ellie. Before I die, you deserve the truth. I read it again. Again. Until the ink softened and blurred through my tears. Before I die. Is he alive? Is he searching for forgiveness, or confessing a sin I never knew existed? Just as a sob rose in my throat, someone knocked on the door. 3 slow, deliberate taps. Not a neighbor. Not my grandson. Not anyone who belonged in this quiet evening. Another knock, firmer, urgent. I tucked Samuel's letter into my robe pocket and moved toward the door. My voice trembled when I asked, "Who is it?" Silence. Then, a third knock. A knock that felt like history returning for me. With breath trembling in my chest, I opened the door. A young man stood there under the dim porch light. Tall. Serious. A shadow in his eyes that didn't belong to someone his age. He stared at me with anger, grief, and something dangerously close to recognition. "Mrs. Reeves?" he asked softly. "Yes," I whispered. "My name is Jacob Carter." "I think you knew my father." "Samuel Carter." And just like that, after 50 years of silence, the past came knocking on my door. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Jacob Carter. Samuel's son. His eyes, oh Lord, those eyes were Samuel's. That same storm-gray depth, that quiet sorrow that always looked like it belonged to a man who'd lived through too much. 50 years had passed since I last saw that gaze, yet my heart recognized it instantly, painfully. I stepped aside, motioning him in. He hesitated, his hand tightening on the doorframe as if stepping inside meant acknowledging a past he wasn't sure he wanted to uncover. "Thank you," he murmured at last, though every word sounded weighted. He entered slowly, scanning my living room, each photograph, each antique frame, each memory suspended in the quiet air. I watched him silently, afraid of what he'd say, and more afraid of what he already knew. Would you like some tea? I asked, needing a moment to steady myself. No, he didn't blink. I'm not here for tea, Mrs. Reeves. My fingers twisted together. Then why are you here? Jacob turned to me, and for the first time, his grief sharpened into something almost accusatory. I came because my father mentioned you before he died. Inside me, something cracked. He told me, Jacob continued, that you were the only person who could explain what happened to him. Why his life spiraled the way it did. A coldness crept through my hands. Explain what, sweetheart? I whispered. Jacob's eyes hardened. Explain why he spent his entire life broken. Why he carried guilt like a second skin. Why he believed he ruined everything for the woman he loved. The room seemed to tilt around me. Jacob, I breathed, I never blamed him. I never. That's not what he believed. Jacob's voice fractured. He died thinking he destroyed your life. Tears stung my eyes. He didn't ruin anything for me. I made my own choices. Jacob shook his head. That's not what he wrote. My heart seized. What did he write? Jacob reached into his coat and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, yellowed, frayed, aged by regret. Samuel's handwriting stared back at me like a ghost. My voice cracked. Where did you find this? In a locked metal box, Jacob said. He must have written it decades ago. He never mailed it. Before I could speak, he reached into his jacket again. There's something else you need to see. He handed me a small, creased photograph. The moment I looked at it, the world spun. It was me. 23 years old. Tears on my cheeks. And Samuel holding my hands, begging, pleading, as if it were the last time he'd ever see me. My breath trembled. Where did you get this? My father kept it hidden. Jacob's jaw tightened. My mother never knew it existed. I swallowed hard. Your mother. Yes. His voice shifted, darker. She was the reason he left you. My pulse stopped. Jacob, I whispered, are you saying Samuel was forced to marry your mother? His silence was answer enough. The tension in his shoulders, the way he avoided my eyes, oh God. Before I could speak, the wind slammed against the windows. Loose papers scattered. The letter in Jacob's hand fluttered dangerously. He caught it just in time. And when he looked at me again, something haunted lived in his gaze. Mrs. Reeves, he said, voice trembling. My father didn't just leave you. He swallowed. He was warned to stay away from you. Warned? The words sliced through the room like lightning. By whom? And why, me? The past, the one I buried under marriage, motherhood, and silence, suddenly felt alive again, clawing its way back toward me. For years, I told myself Samuel left because the fire between us dimmed, or because life simply tugged us in opposite directions. But the moment Jacob said Samuel had been warned to stay away from me, a tremor traveled through my bones so deep I feared they might crack. I gripped the edge of my armchair, steadying myself against a truth I had never imagined. Jacob, who warned him? I whispered. He didn't answer right away. That hesitation, that small, fragile pause, told me the truth was darker, sharper, and far more personal than I was ready for. My father didn't give me the name, Jacob murmured. Not when I was younger. He said I wouldn't understand. But before he died, he finally wrote it down. He tapped the letter in his hand, the paper thin as breath. It's in here. My heart stilled. That envelope suddenly felt like a bomb that had waited half a century to detonate. Before you read it, Jacob said quietly, you should understand something about my father. I wiped my palms on my skirt. Understand what? My father wasn't a man who ran, Jacob said, voice trembling with a mixture of loyalty and grief. He didn't back down from fights. He never let anyone intimidate him. So whoever, or whatever, scared him enough to walk away from you. He paused, swallowing. It must have been something serious. Something he thought would destroy you. A hollow ache opened inside me. Jacob, I never sensed anything was wrong, I whispered. He never said a word. I believe you. He sank into the chair across from me, rubbing his forehead with a trembling hand. I didn't come here to blame you. I came because I'm angry. Angry that he carried a burden he should never have carried alone. I moved closer, the years between Samuel and me collapsing like dust. Tell me what he told you. Jacob exhaled slowly, as if releasing a weight he'd held for years. He said the night before he left, he met with someone he trusted. Someone who told him he had no future with you. That if he stayed by your side, there would be consequences. The word consequences struck like a knife. What consequences? I whispered. Jacob shook his head. He never said. Only that the threat wasn't for him. It was for you. My breath caught. Jacob, I said quietly, do you know who it was? He closed his eyes, as if bracing himself. I didn't, he said softly. Not until I read this letter. He placed the envelope gently in my hands. It felt warm, pulsing almost, like it carried Samuel's last breath. My fingers hovered over the seal, trembling. Before you open it, Jacob said, voice fragile, you need to know something else. I lifted my gaze. My father didn't just leave you. His jaw tightened. He didn't marry my mother out of love. He was forced. Cornered. My throat tightened. Forced by who? Jacob whispered. By someone in your family. Everything inside me went still. My family? The words scraped out of me. Jacob, that's impossible. He shook his head. No. It isn't. The room felt suffocating. Heavy. As if the walls themselves were holding secrets. I looked at the letter again, but my fingers refused to tear the seal, not when my heart was already breaking. Jacob, I breathed, who in my family would threaten him? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, face pale as moonlight. Mrs. Reeves, he said softly, it was your mother. The letter slipped from my hands, landing on the carpet with a soft sigh. No, I whispered, shaking my head. No. My mother would never. She did, Jacob said gently. And Samuel wrote everything, every detail, inside that letter. A tightness coiled in my chest. Images of my mother, stern, proud, unyielding, flashed like shards of glass. Jacob watched me with a sorrow that broke something inside me. I barely slept after Jacob left. His words circled through my mind like restless ghosts. Someone in my family warned Samuel to stay away. Someone I trusted. Someone I loved. Every time that truth brushed against me, it hurt in a way I didn't know the heart could hurt, a deep, trembling ache that reached into places I thought had healed. But when morning light slipped through my curtains, soft and unassuming, I forced myself to sit up. I am old, yes, but age does not excuse cowardice. I ran from too many truths in my youth. I would not run now. With hands that felt older than my years, I reached under my bed for a wooden memory box I had hidden long ago. It held the remnants of a life I lived in silence, the life Samuel and I shared without ever speaking its full story aloud. The first thing I lifted out was his photograph. The ink had faded, the corners curled, but his smile, that smile always felt the same. Soft. Apologetic. As if he knew something the rest of the world didn't. My fingertips brushed the image. Samuel, what did you try to protect me from? And then, a memory surfaced, quiet, dusty, but unmistakably clear. A letter. A letter he wrote to me decades ago, one I had never opened. I kept it hidden in the back of my dresser, pressed behind the lining like a secret I wasn't ready to face. Perhaps even then, a part of me knew the truth inside would change everything. My heart thudded as I pulled open the drawer. I lifted the lining with slow, careful fingers and slid out the envelope. It was yellowed with age, edges softened by time. My name, Ellie, was written in his familiar slanted script. My breath strained. For a moment, I simply held the envelope to my chest, feeling the weight of years pressing against me. I might have opened it right then, if not for the sound that followed. The front gate clicked. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. Footsteps approached my porch, slow, deliberate, as if the person walking carried the same heaviness that hung around my heart. Then came a knock, gentle, steady, almost apologetic. I slipped Samuel's letter beneath my pillow and forced air into my lungs. My legs trembled as I walked to the door. When I opened it, Daniel stood there. Sweet, earnest Daniel, my neighbor's boy. He looked different today. His shoulders sagged, and the light in his eyes had dimmed, replaced by something that looked dangerously like guilt. Morning, Mrs. Reeves, he said, voice quiet and unsure. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I needed to talk to you. His voice cracked on the last word. Of course, dear, I said softly, stepping aside. He entered slowly, as if unsure he deserved to. His hands shook as he sat on my couch, and he stared at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. I need to tell you something, he whispered. Anne. I don't want you to hate me for it. My chest tightened. Hate you? Why on earth would I? It's about my mother, he interrupted softly. And about the man she said ruined her life. The room tilted. My fingers curled into my skirt, bracing for impact. What man? I forced out. He lifted his eyes, full of sorrow. Samuel, he whispered. She kept something about him. Something she made me promise to tell you if she ever couldn't say it herself. My breath caught in my throat. Daniel's mother. Another connection. Another secret. Another door I had never meant to open. He reached into his jacket with trembling hands. She told me, you're the only one who deserves to know. When Daniel spoke James's name, it felt as if the air itself tightened around me. For decades, I had carried that name like a fragile flame cupped between trembling hands, shielded from gossip, from cruelty, from people who would never understand. But hearing it now, from the lips of a stranger's son, I was not prepared for that. I drew a slow, unsteady breath. What did your mother say about him? Daniel pressed his palms together, squeezing them so firmly his knuckles lost all color. His gaze drifted somewhere far away, into some memory that frightened him. She said James broke her heart, he whispered. She said he loved someone he wasn't supposed to, and because of that, everything in her life went wrong. The words pierced deeper than I expected. At my age, I thought I had already survived every kind of pain, grief, longing, regret. But this accusation from the past, this was a new kind of wound. I steadied my voice. Your mother, who was she, dear? He hesitated, then looked up. My mother was Clara. My heart lurched painfully. Clara. A girl with quiet eyes and a storm inside her. A girl who followed James with a hope she tried so hard to hide. A girl who once pulled me aside, her voice trembling, and asked, "Do you love him?" And I, terrified of my own truth, answered a lie that cost me more than truth ever would have. No. Of course not. I had no idea that a lie whispered in fear could echo for an entire lifetime. Daniel watched me with a desperate kind of longing, like a child trying to understand the shape of a shadow. What did she tell you, exactly? I asked softly. He swallowed. His voice cracked. She said James ruined her life because he loved someone else, someone who never loved him back. His eyes glistened. She said that woman destroyed everything. A coldness spread through me. All my life, I had carried guilt for things I never confessed, but this was a blame I never expected to bear. Daniel, My voice trembled. Why bring this to me? He looked down at his shaking hands. Because before she died, he whispered, she told me something else. Something she made me promise never to repeat. He lifted his eyes, full of fear, full of a truth too heavy for someone so young. She said I had to come to you and tell you the truth she hid all her life. My breath faltered. What truth? He reached into his backpack and carefully pulled out an old notebook. The cover was worn, edges soft with age. It looked like something held tightly through many troubled nights. This was hers, he said. Her diary. She wanted you to have it. The sight of it froze me. A diary is a graveyard of secrets, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough to walk through hers. But Daniel wasn't finished. There's one more thing, he said quietly, the thing she made me promise to say out loud. My hands tightened on the armrest. He looked straight at me, no trembling now, just truth. She said James loved you until his last breath. His voice dropped to a whisper. And she said, you should have known the truth about me. My heart thudded painfully, a deep, heavy sound. What truth, about you? I asked, barely breathing. Daniel's eyes softened with something like sorrow, or confusion, or fear. She said, that James might be my father. For a long, shaking moment, I simply stared at Daniel, this young man sitting in my living room with a truth big enough to shatter a lifetime. My breath felt thin, like the air itself was trying to slip away from me. James might be my father. The sentence echoed through my mind like footsteps in an abandoned corridor, each repetition colder than the last. I pressed a trembling hand to my chest. At my age, I believed my heart had already felt every kind of ache, the quiet sorrow of loss, the sharp sting of regret, the long ache of unspoken love. But this was something entirely different. A truth I had never carried, yet one that suddenly belonged to me. Finally, I managed his name. Daniel, who told your mother that? How could she know? He lowered his gaze, voice soft as a confession. She said she overheard something. A conversation James had, years ago. But she never told me who he was speaking to. A cold memory stirred inside me, one of those faint recollections we store in dark corners because we're afraid of what they might reveal. You said she believed I ruined her life, I murmured. Daniel nodded, almost apologetically. She thought James cared for you in a way she couldn't accept. And she held on to that hurt for years. Ah. Jealousy, the oldest storyteller, the cruelest historian. I closed my eyes. Clara had always carried a quiet storm inside her. I saw it even then, the way she watched James, the way she watched me. But I never knew the depth of her longing, or the depth of her wounds. Daniel, I whispered, James never told me that he possibly had a child. I know. His voice cracked. That's why I'm here. I don't know what's real. My mother, she lived with this secret for so long that I think it swallowed her. The way he said it broke something inside me. A child searching for the truth of his own existence, what suffering that must be. I looked at the diary resting on the table. A small, worn thing, yet it carried the gravity of a sealed confession. Did you read it? I asked. He shook his head. No. She said it wasn't for me. She said, it was meant for you. A strange fear crept through me. A diary is not just paper, it is the inside of a person carved into words. And Clara's heart had never been an easy place. Daniel, I said gently, if James truly is your father, what is it you hope to find? He looked at me with eyes that reminded me of a lonely child sitting in the last row of a classroom. I just want to know who I am, he whispered. And why she carried this secret like a burden she couldn't put down. Ah. That longing, that ache. I knew it well. I took the diary into my lap. My hands trembled as I lifted the fragile cover. I'll read it, I said softly. But, dear, I cannot promise it will give either of us the peace we're looking for. I'm ready, he whispered. I wished I could say the same. With a deep breath, I opened the first page. Clara's handwriting greeted me, delicate, shaky, as if written by someone who had already begun saying goodbye. For the woman he loved. The word struck like a soft blade. A gentle sentence, yet sharp enough to draw blood. I turned the next page. The first entry began. I wasn't supposed to hear what I heard that night. But once I did, nothing stayed the same. I felt Daniel lean closer, breath unsteady. Then my eyes reached the next line, the one that split open years I thought were sealed. He told her, he could never marry anyone else. Not even for the child. My hand flew to my mouth. Daniel's breath cracked beside me. What does that mean? I closed the diary, heart thundering. It means. My voice trembled with something between shock and heartbreak. James might have known. And still, he never told me. For a long, aching moment, I sat frozen with Clara's diary open in my trembling hands. The words on the page blurred, then sharpened, then blurred again, as if my heart itself refused to let them settle. He could never marry anyone else. Not even for the child. Beside me, Daniel sat silent. Too silent. Silence can be gentle, or it can be the loudest scream. The silence in that moment felt like a scream neither of us knew how to answer. Still, I forced myself to turn the page. The next entry was dated only 3 days later. I saw him again today. He was crying. I didn't know James could cry. He kept saying he loved her too much. He wished the truth didn't exist. My breath hitched. James. Crying. The man whose steadiness once held my world together, reduced to tears by a truth I had never been trusted with. My fingers shook as I turned to the next entry. He was terrified she'd find out. Terrified she'd think he betrayed her. He said he never meant for it to happen. He said he was broken after she turned him away. A coldness slipped through my chest. Turned him away? When had I ever turned him away? Daniel's brow furrowed. What does that mean? I don't know, I whispered. I truly don't. But inside, a memory stirred. A memory I had buried so deeply I almost believed it never happened. I turned another page. She found out something. Something she wasn't supposed to hear. And now everything is falling apart. My heart clenched. I found out something. I closed my eyes, letting the years peel back one by one. And then I remembered. The night James left town, long before the letter, I had gone to the old train station searching for him. I was young, uncertain, desperate for answers I didn't know how to ask. I never found him. But I had overheard voices. Not his. Someone else's. A harsh whisper. She doesn't know. And she can't. If she finds out, she'll destroy everything. I remembered freezing, my name trembling in that air. I remembered running away before the truth could catch up to me. Daniel noticed the change in my breathing. Mrs. Hill, what did you hear? I opened my eyes, the diary trembling in my lap. I heard someone warning him about me, I said softly. As if I was a danger. As if my knowing the truth would ruin something important. Daniel's eyes widened in quiet horror. You think it was connected to me? Perhaps. Perhaps not. But suddenly, painfully, so many things aligned. The townspeople's whispers that year. Clara's bitterness. James's sudden distance. That urgent train station meeting. And his desperate declaration in the diary. He wished the truth didn't exist. My voice cracked. Daniel, if James thought he might be your father, he may have been protecting you. Or protecting me. Or protecting someone else entirely. Then why hide it? Daniel whispered, voice raw. Why live his whole life pretending? The answer came not as a thought, but as a memory. James never lied for himself. He lied for others. Always for others. I turned another page, praying, fearing, for clarity. And then I found it. A sentence written in shaky, broken ink. I finally told him the truth tonight. I couldn't carry the lie anymore. He deserved to know the child wasn't his. Even if it breaks him. My heart lurched. The room tilted. Daniel's voice cracked like glass. What does that mean? It means, dear. My throat closed on the words. Your mother might have lied. To him. And to you. Daniel's face crumpled, grief folding him inward. But if he wasn't my father, why would she say he was? Why send me to you? Why now? I opened my mouth. But then it happened. A sound. A slow, heavy creak from the back hallway. Not memory. Not imagination. Footsteps. Real. Measured. Coming closer. Daniel went pale. And for the first time in years, I felt fear settle into my bones. The footsteps came again, slow, unhurried, deliberate. Daniel stiffened beside me, every muscle drawn tight as wire. I felt the air shift around us, heavy with something old, something that had been waiting in silence far too long. The diary trembled in my hands, even the ink on the pages felt alive, as though Clara's words were holding their breath. Stay behind me, Daniel murmured. For a moment, I almost laughed. A 78-year-old woman hiding behind a young man, life has its ways of turning itself inside out. But the fear in his voice was not something I could brush aside. The footsteps drew closer, across the hallway floor, past the kitchen, stopping right in front of the living room door. Then, a soft knock. Not on the front door. On the living room door. My skin prickled. Daniel's whisper barely held together. Is anyone supposed to be here? No, I breathed. No one. The doorknob turned with a quiet, dreadful patience. And then the door opened. A man stepped inside, tall, graying, rain clinging to the shoulders of his coat. His face carried a strange mixture of guilt and relief, like someone who had walked too long with a burden that didn't belong to him. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Because I knew that face. Not from memory. Not from photographs. But from the unmistakable shape of the eyes. The same eyes that Daniel had inherited. This wasn't James. This wasn't Michael. This was someone I had hoped never to see again. Mr. Thompson? I whispered. Clara's brother? His expression softened with sorrow. Maggie, it's time. You both deserve the truth. Daniel's voice cracked. You knew my mother? Mr. Thompson nodded. I knew everything, son. More than I ever wanted to. He stepped farther inside, and the room seemed to shrink around him. For 40 years, he said quietly, I carried a secret Clara didn't have the courage to face. A secret she made me swear to keep, even from you, Daniel. Daniel's breathing quickened. Why? Why lie? Why hide everything? Mr. Thompson closed his eyes, as if walking through a memory that still hurt to touch. Because she was frightened, he said softly. And because she made a terrible mistake. My heart clenched. What kind of mistake? He looked at me, deep regret lining his face. Maggie, the person who threatened James at the train station. Was Clara. Daniel's breath hitched. I felt the room tilt. My grip tightened on the diary until the leather creaked. Mr. Thompson continued, his voice trembling. She overheard James telling a friend he wanted to marry you. She panicked, terrified that if he did, the truth about her child would come out. He turned to Daniel. You weren't James's son, Daniel. Clara told him the truth the night before he left town. Daniel's face drained of color. Then who was my father? Mr. Thompson sighed, a sound that seemed to carry decades of sorrow. Your real father was a married man. Someone Clara loved, but could never have. She thought pretending James was the father would protect you, and protect her from disgrace. My knees nearly gave way. James. He had carried that truth alone. He had sacrificed everything for a child who was never his. Mr. Thompson's voice broke. When James said he still wanted to propose to you, Clara lost control. She threatened him, told him that if he didn't leave town, she'd expose the affair and destroy all your lives. He swallowed hard. James left to protect you both. Daniel staggered back, tears burning his eyes. She lied, to me, to him. I reached for him as gently as my age would allow. You came searching for answers, dear. That takes courage, not shame. Mr. Thompson took a slow breath. There's one more thing, the real reason Clara wanted you to find Maggie. I looked up sharply. Why me, after all these years? Because, he said softly, you're the only person who ever knew James's heart. She wanted Daniel to hear the truth from the woman James loved, not from the fear that ruined everything. Silence filled the room, deep, heavy, final. Daniel wiped his eyes, his voice barely a whisper. Maggie, will you tell me about him? I nodded, because after 40 years of silence, it was finally time to finish the story we never got to live.